Cristiano Ronaldo is my name. There are a number of questions asked during the interview process when you apply for a job, and the more prepared you are, the better your interview will go. It is possible that you have seen a number of videos on the internet that discuss the most typical interview questions and responses. Now, this video will be a little different because it will cover more than just the questions and answers we will discuss. I will also explain what the interviewer is thinking when he asks specific questions, what specific answers he is looking at, and what common mistakes you typically make. Tell me about yourself is the first question that interviewers ask most frequently. They may also ask you to go over your resume. The interviewer is not really interested in your response at this point. They are focusing on your self-assurance, zeal, and the fire with which you respond. Thus, now is the ideal moment to demonstrate your communication abilities. These days, I have seen that a lot of individuals end up stating things like, I love watching movies, I think I love partying, I have so many friends, so I really enjoy partying. No, you should not respond to this question in that manner. What you should discuss is your schooling, your upbringing, and your hobbies. If you have any prior work experience, you can also discuss it. You may say, for instance, I studied accounting and I grew up in France. In my free time, I enjoy reading and exercising only when the weather permits. I also worked for approximately 8 months at an accounting business, and I truly adore numbers, so perhaps that is why I love solving them. That is how you would respond to this question, then. What are your strengths? Is the second most common question an interviewer asks. The interviewer is now examining your level of self-confidence. Since it is such a broad subject, there is not a right or wrong response. However, it does not sound good for an interview if you say something like, I am a very friendly person, and people love being with me. You could say that my attention to detail is my strongest quality. I firmly think that preparation and execution are important. Because I am so gregarious and have been described as approachable by many, I used to really plan my week and interact with a lot of people even when I was in college. Thus, I think these are my strong points. What are your weaknesses? Is the third most frequently asked question. You do not have to have a very bad opinion of yourself to answer this question. People have told me that I am a very impatient person and that I get irritated easily. That is not the correct response, though. Perhaps that is your weakness, but you do not have to show it. This is the perfect response since the interviewer is trying to find out if you can recognize your weaknesses and how you can hide them. To answer this question, you could say something like, I believe my weakness is that I am way too detail-oriented. I strive for perfection and try to do everything, but I eventually realize that I am running out of time. Perhaps that is why I am turning in these work so late. That, in my opinion, is one of the weaknesses. Essentially, what you are doing here is showing that you may be pressed for time, but you are also highlighting your meticulous tendencies. And it is precisely what we perceived as a strength in the first query as well. This, in my opinion, is among the greatest ways to respond to this query. Why do you see yourself in 5 years, is the next often asked question. The interviewer may also inquire about your short-term or long-term objectives. I have now witnessed folks struggle greatly to respond to this question. Perhaps because you are unsure about your desired destination. People frequently conclude by adding, oh, I would like to own an airline or be the CEO of this company. That sounds incorrect. Given that the interviewer is examining your level of commitment to the organization, this is an excellent question to answer. A very clear and dedicated path, as you are aware of the current attrition rate. He so wishes to know how long you will remain with the organization. One of the finest responses you might provide would be, well, I think I would like to be in a management position in 5 years. Prior to becoming a manager, I would like to obtain real-world experience. Naturally, I want to learn a lot from my teammates and share a lot as well. So tell me something about our company, or what do you know about our company, is the next most frequently requested question. At this point, the interviewer is obviously familiar with the business he works for. However, he is examining your level of commitment to this position. Whether you are here for a random interview or something else entirely. A lot of consumers are typically disappointed by the company's lack of research. Therefore, you must conduct study, visit the internet, and discover the company's advantages. Find out about their history, goods, etc. One of the greatest ways to respond to this question is to say, "Oh, well, your company has a great reputation for providing excellent customer service, and you have also won an award for being the best service provider in the nation. Naturally, you also have a fantastic clientele." That is one of the finest ways to respond to this question, then. How successfully do you manage change? Is the sixth most often asked question. Well, the idea behind this inquiry is to find out if you could adapt to a change. Because businesses typically develop a variety of strategies. Would you be able to deal with the influx and outflow of employees? The typical response is, "Of course I am great at handling a change." But believe me, this response would not impress the interviewer. One way to respond to this issue would be to say, "Of course I can handle a change, as one of our immediate bosses at my previous employer had to resign. Additionally, a project's approach was entirely altered by the new boss who took over. Naturally, I am also highly adaptable and diligent." Thus, we succeeded through teamwork, and the outcomes were unquestionably satisfactory. Thus, this is how you could respond to this query. How well do you perform under pressure is the next often asked question. This question is being asked because the interviewer or employer wants to know if you experience a lot of stress. Do you experience severe terror when under pressure? Because businesses nowadays naturally expect you to take on more responsibility and a heavier task. The easiest way to respond to this issue is to say that, in my experience, working under pressure and without it is equally effective. In fact, at one of the companies where I worked, we were given a project that needed to be finished in 4 days, even though it generally takes 10. The team as a whole was so overwhelmed that they panicked and were at a loss for what to do. However, after I made sure they were settled, we set priorities for our work and really finished the assignment in a very well-organized way. We worked late into the night, of course, but that enabled us turn in our project in 4 days. Therefore, I do not think I have a problem operating under pressure. Thus, this is among the greatest methods to respond to this query. The final frequently asked question is, how do you handle important decisions? This question is typically asked to determine whether the interviewer or someone else is hiring you for a lead or management role. So, he wants to know how you would manage a very crucial, very essential decision if you had to make it someday. Ultimately, a lot of people respond, "Oh, you know what, I really have not encountered or dealt with such difficult situations." You would be wrong to respond that way. One of the finest responses I can provide you is that, although handling decisions is undoubtedly thought to be a little challenging, I am confident that I can do it since I would rely on my expertise. I would also consider the advantages and disadvantages. Naturally, I would also ask my teammates for input, and I am confident that this would aid in my decision-making. We shall also examine the decision's ramifications. I can therefore proceed with making decisions. I have now reached the conclusion of this lesson. If you are going for an interview, I hope all of these questions and answers will be useful. I also wish you luck and hope to see you in the future course. Thank you, and be careful.